The crystalline mountains of Proxima 7 shimmered under its binary stars, their peaks piercing through swirling violet clouds. Lieutenant Rena Walsh checked her medical scanner again, frowning at the erratic life signs it detected. The emergency beacon had led her rescue team to this location, but the treacherous terrain had forced her to continue alone while her ship maintained orbit. Through her helmet's enhanced vision, she spotted the crash site, a diplomatic vessel bearing the markings of the Collective, the galaxy's most advanced civilization. The ship's elegant design was now marred by impact damage and scoring that suggested weapons fire. This was no accident. As she approached, her scanner picked up a single survivor. The readings were unlike anything she'd seen in her decade of emergency medicine. The victim's physiology was complex, operating on multiple dimensional frequencies that her equipment could barely process. "Hello," she called out, activating her suit's universal translator. "I'm Lieutenant Walsh of the Earth Medical Corps. I'm here to help." A weak voice responded in surprisingly clear English. "Stay back. Your primitive medicine will only make things worse." Rena found the survivor half buried in debris. She was clearly collective. Her iridescent skin seemed to shift between states of matter, and her eyes held galaxies in their depths. But those eyes were now clouded with pain, and a severe wound in her torso pulsed with dangerous energy. "I am Zenaval, third speaker of the Collective," the alien managed. "My ship was attacked by those who oppose dialogue with lesser species." She coughed, and sparkles of light escaped her lips. "Leave me. Your human medicine is too crude for my kind." Rena's scanner told a different story. The energy bleeding from the wound was causing cascade failures throughout Zenaval's system. Without immediate intervention, she would die in minutes. "With respect, third speaker," Rena said firmly, "you don't have time for evacuation. The wound is causing quantum destabilization. I need to stop it now." "Impossible," Zenaval whispered. "Your species barely understands basic particle physics. You cannot possibly." "Your people might be more advanced," Rena interrupted, already pulling equipment from her medkit. "But humans have been patching each other up since we lived in caves. Sometimes the old ways work best." Before Zenaval could protest further, Rena produced a device that looked deceptively simple, a modified cauterization tool of her own design. She theorized it could work on energy-based injuries after studying reports of collective physiology, but had never had the chance to test it. "This will hurt," she warned, calibrating the device. "But it's better than dimensional collapse." "No, you cannot." "Ah!" Zenaval's scream echoed off the crystal peaks as Rena activated the tool. Raw energy crackled between them as the device attracted and contained the quantum bleed, forcing the wound's edges to stabilize. To Rena's trained eye, the process was fascinating, like watching water freeze in reverse, as Zenaval's fluid form regained coherence. The alien's screams subsided to whimpers, then ceased entirely as she stared in disbelief at her now stable wound. "How?" she managed. "That device. It's so simple, almost crude, yet it understood the quantum nature of my form." Rena smiled as she applied a specialized bandage. "Sometimes the most elegant solutions come from basic principles. Your people might be masters of high technology, but humans, we're masters of improvisation." "Perhaps," Zenaval said slowly, "we have underestimated your species." A rumble overhead interrupted them as Rena's rescue ship descended through the atmosphere. As they waited for extraction, Zenaval studied her savior with new interest. "You knew this would work," she said. "It wasn't a question." "I hoped," Rena admitted. "I've spent years studying your species' biology. Everyone said it was impossible for human medicine to help your kind. But I believed there had to be a way. Basic principles of energy and matter don't change just because you exist in multiple dimensions." "Fascinating," Zenaval mused. "You developed a quantum medical tool using what we would consider primitive technology, simply because you refused to believe it was impossible." She winced as she shifted position. "Though I must say, your method was rather intense. That's humans for you, Rena grinned. We might not be the most advanced species, but we're too stubborn to give up when someone tells us something can't be done. As the rescue ship landed nearby, Zenaval reached out and grasped Rena's hand. The touch sent tingles up the human's arm as their different forms of matter interacted. Lieutenant Walsh, the alien said formally, I believe this encounter may change everything we thought we knew about humanity's potential. Would you consider becoming a formal liaison between our peoples? There is much we could learn from each other. I'd be honored, Rena replied. Though you might want to wait until you've experienced more of our primitive medical techniques before making that offer. Zenaval's crystalline laugh echoed across the mountains. I look forward to discovering what other impossible things humans can achieve through sheer determination. As they boarded the rescue ship, both knew this was just the beginning. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from advanced technology, but from the simple refusal to accept limitations. And humans, as the galaxy was about to discover, had never been good at accepting limitations. 2 months after their first encounter on Proxima 7, Rena Walsh found herself deep within the crystal caves of Centauri Prime, following Zenaval's shimmering form through passages that seemed to defy physics. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the very walls were listening. These ruins predate both our civilizations, Zenaval explained, her multidimensional form casting fractals of light across the crystalline walls. The collective has studied them for centuries, but we've never managed to activate any of the technology we found. Rena adjusted her environmental suit's sensors, studying the strange markings that covered the walls. And you think humans might have better luck? I thought we were the primitives. That perception is changing, Zenaval replied, a smile in her voice. After your unconventional solution to my injury, our scientists have been reevaluating many assumptions about human potential. Your species has a unique way of approaching problems. They entered a vast chamber that took Rena's breath away. Crystalline structures rose like frozen fountains, their surfaces covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move when viewed from different angles. At the center stood what could only be described as a control panel, though it looked more like a natural growth than constructed technology. This is the main interface, Zenaval said, approaching the crystal console. Our most brilliant minds have tried for decades to understand its operation. The energy patterns suggest it's capable of incredible things, but we've never been able to. She stopped as Rena walked straight up to the console and placed her hand on its surface. The entire chamber hummed to life, crystals lighting up in cascading patterns as ancient machinery awakened. How did you? Zenaval stared in disbelief. The patterns, Rena shrugged. They reminded me of neural pathways. I figured if this was built by an ancient species, they probably designed it to respond to conscious thought. Simple, direct contact seemed worth trying. Simple, Zenaval echoed, shaking her head in amazement. We spent years analyzing energy signatures and quantum resonances, and you just touched it. The console projected a holographic display, but instead of the expected star charts or technical data, it showed what appeared to be medical information. Rena leaned forward, fascinated. These are genetic sequences, she said, recognizing patterns from her medical training. But they're unlike anything I've ever seen. Look at how they interact with dimensional frequencies. This is impossible. Zenaval moved closer, her form shifting in excitement. These readings suggest, but that cannot be. What? According to this, humans and the collective were meant to interact. Our different approaches to existence, your linear, physical focus and our multidimensional complexity, they're complementary, by design. The chamber's lights pulsed faster as more data streamed through the holographic display. Rena's mind raced as she processed the implications. Someone engineered our species to be evolutionary partners, she breathed. But why? A rumble shook the cave before Zenaval could answer. Warning signals flashed across the console's display. We have company. Zenaval's form tensed. The same faction that attacked my ship. They must have followed us. Rena checked her medical kit, which she'd modified with some of her quantum treatment tools. How many? At least a dozen ships. They're landing outside the cave system. Good thing I brought some other primitive human solutions then. Rena pulled out what looked like modified mining charges. Sometimes the old ways really do work best. Zenaval's crystalline laugh echoed through the chamber. I'm beginning to understand why the ancients might have paired our species. Shall we show our unwelcome guests what happens when human ingenuity meets collective wisdom? As they prepared their defense of the ancient facility, Rena couldn't help but smile. 2 months ago, the idea of a human and a collective member fighting side by side would have seemed impossible. But then again, humans had always been good at making the impossible happen. The sound of energy weapons echoed through the caves. The attackers were getting closer. But between Rena's primitive explosive traps and Zenaval's multidimensional abilities, they were in for quite a surprise. Ready? Rena asked, positioning herself behind a crystal formation. Ready, Zenaval confirmed, her form shifting into combat mode. Though I must admit, I never expected to find myself trusting in human explosive devices. Trust me, Rena grinned, they won't expect it either. The crystal caves erupted in chaos as the attackers breached the outer defenses. Rena's explosive traps worked perfectly, their carefully calibrated charges disrupting both physical matter and dimensional frequencies. The attackers, rogue collective separatists, clearly hadn't expected such primitive but effective resistance. Your people are remarkably creative with destructive devices, Zenaval observed as another explosion sent crystalline shrapnel flying through multiple dimensions. We had lots of practice fighting each other before we reached the stars, Rena replied, checking her modified medical scanner. Though I usually use these skills for healing rather than harm. A separatist patrol rounded the corner, their energy weapons charging. Before they could fire, Zenaval shifted into her combat form, becoming a swirling vortex of dimensional energy. Combined with Rena's quantum-modified stun grenades, they made short work of the attackers. Speaking of healing, Rena said, kneeling beside one of the unconscious separatists, we should stabilize them, even if they are trying to kill us. Zenaval's form rippled with surprise. You would help them, after they attacked us. I'm a doctor first, Rena shrugged, pulling out her medical kit. Besides, we might need answers from them later. As Rena worked, applying her hybrid human collective medical techniques, Zenaval kept watch. The chamber's ancient technology continued to hum around them, seemingly responding to their presence. There's something happening here that goes beyond this attack, Zenaval said thoughtfully. The way the facility responds to you, to us working together, it's as if it's been waiting. Like a key finding its lock, Rena agreed, finishing with her patient. But why would the ancients want humans and the collective to work together so badly that they engineered our species for it? The answer came in the form of a massive tremor that shook the entire cave system. Warning signals flashed across the ancient console's holographic display. That wasn't from the fighting, Rena said, rushing to check the readings. Something's happening deeper in the facility. These energy patterns, they're similar to the quantum destabilization I treated in your wound, but on a massive scale. Zenaval's form contracted in alarm. The separatists must have brought dimensional destabilizers, weapons that can tear apart the fabric of space-time. They would rather destroy these ruins than let us discover their secrets. Another tremor, stronger this time. Crystals began falling from the ceiling as reality itself seemed to fluctuate around them. We need to shut it down, Rena said, studying the ancient console. But this goes way beyond my expertise in quantum medicine, and beyond my understanding of dimensional physics, Zenaval added. The separatists knew exactly where to plant their devices. The cascade reaction is spreading through multiple dimensions. Rena's eyes narrowed as she watched the holographic display. Maybe we're overthinking this. The ancients designed this place to respond to both our species working together. What if that's the key? What are you suggesting? Something incredibly stupid and primitive, Rena grinned. But it might just work. How good are you at conducting energy through multiple dimensions? Understanding dawned in Zenaval's crystalline features. You want to use me as a conduit while you guide the energy flow through physical space. That's completely against all safety protocols. Do you have a better idea? Another tremor nearly knocked them off their feet. The cave walls were beginning to show fractal patterns of dimensional damage. This is madness, Zenaval said, but her form was already shifting into position. If we survive this, the Collective Science Council will never believe it. That's the spirit, Rena laughed, placing her hands on the console. Ready? No, but proceed anyway. Rena closed her eyes, focusing on the energy patterns like she had when treating Zenaval's wound. She felt the ancient technology respond, connecting with her consciousness. Through their linked awareness, she could sense Zenaval's multidimensional presence spreading through space like a net of starlight. The power began to flow, raw and primal. Rena guided it through physical space, while Zenaval channeled it through dimensional frequencies. Together, they created a pattern that matched the facility's original design, containing and neutralizing the cascade reaction. The Separatists' weapons overloaded and burned out. The dimensional damage began to repair itself as the ancient technology responded to their combined effort. When it was over, Rena opened her eyes to find the cave stabilized and Zenaval staring at her with an expression that somehow managed to convey both exasperation and admiration across species barriers. That, Zenaval said, was the most dangerously primitive solution I have ever seen work. You literally broke every known protocol for handling dimensional energy. But it worked, Rena pointed out. Yes, Zenaval admitted, her form settling back into its normal state. It worked because you trusted your instincts and I trusted you, just as the ancients intended. The console's holographic display had changed, now showing new information that hadn't been visible before. The genetic sequences were clearer, revealing more about the ancients' plan for their two species. Look at this, Rena said, examining the data. They didn't just engineer us to work together. They designed us to evolve together. Each generation of human and collective interaction was meant to bring us closer to something. But what? Zenaval moved closer, her dimensional energy harmonizing with Rena's physical presence in a way that felt surprisingly natural. What goal could be so important that an advanced civilization would engineer two species to achieve it? Before Rena could respond, her medical scanner picked up new signals. More ships entering the atmosphere, but these ones are broadcasting collective peacekeeping codes. The cavalry arrives just after we've handled everything ourselves, Zenaval said with what sounded suspiciously like a human-style snort. How typically bureaucratic. Rena smiled as she began treating the remaining unconscious separatists. Well, we could use the help securing the facility. And someone needs to write up all those protocols I just broke. I believe you mean all the protocols we broke together, Zenaval corrected. After all, that appears to be what we were designed for. The Collective Science Council's emergency session was going about as well as Rena had expected, which was to say, not well at all. The vast chamber, designed to accommodate beings from multiple dimensional states, hummed with agitated energy as council members argued across frequency bands. Completely unacceptable, First Speaker Vorntal declared, his form a swirling mass of indignant light. Lieutenant Walsh's methods violated every established safety protocol for handling dimensional energy. Her methods saved the facility and stopped the separatists. Zenaval countered, her own form pulsing with barely contained frustration. More importantly, they proved what the ancient data suggested. Humans and the collective were meant to work together. Rena stood quietly, watching the debate. After 3 months of studying the ruins, she'd learned to read collective body language. The council wasn't just afraid of change. They were terrified of what she and Zenaval had discovered. The human's presence has clearly compromised your judgment, third speaker, another council member said. These ancient readings you cite could easily be misinterpreted. The idea that our species were engineered to evolve together is is supported by empirical evidence. Rena interrupted, stepping forward. She'd had enough. Your own scientists have confirmed the genetic markers. The ancients designed both our species with complementary traits. Humans' linear physical focus balances your multidimensional complexity. Our instinctive problem-solving compensates for your theoretical approach. The chamber fell silent. No human had ever dared address the council without permission. But Rena wasn't finished. You're so convinced of your superiority that you've forgotten how to adapt. That's why you can't activate the ancient technology. You've lost touch with the primal instincts the ancients built into both our species. How dare you? Vorntal began, but a new alarm cut him off. The chamber's emergency displays activated, showing a massive energy surge from the ruins. The separatists, Zenaval's form contracted in alarm. They must have had a backup plan. These readings, they're trying to trigger a dimensional collapse that will destroy the entire system. The council erupted in panic, their forms shifting chaotically as they debated evacuation protocols. But Rena was already moving, her mind racing with possibilities. Zenaval, she called. Remember how we stabilized the facility before? We need to do that again, but bigger. Much bigger. That's insane, Vorntal protested. The energy levels are too high. No physical being could survive directing that much dimensional power. Good thing I'm not planning to do it alone, Rena replied, meeting Zenaval's gaze. You with me? Always, Zenaval's form brightened. Though I feel compelled to note that this plan is even more primitive and reckless than your usual ideas. Would you expect anything less from a human? They raced to the facility's core, leaving the sputtering council behind. The ancient chamber was pulsing with dangerous energy, reality itself beginning to fray around the edges. The separatists rigged the main reactor. Zenaval analyzed, her form spreading out to scan multiple dimensions. They're forcing a quantum cascade that will tear apart the dimensional barriers. Can you channel it like before? Rena asked, already moving to the central console. The energy levels are magnitudes higher. Even attempting this could kill us both. But if we don't try, everyone dies. Rena placed her hands on the console, feeling the ancient technology respond to her presence. Besides, this is what we were made for. The ancients knew our species would face challenges we could only overcome together. Zenaval's form enveloped her, dimensional energy harmonizing with her physical form in a way that felt more natural each time they tried it. Your human certainty is both terrifying and oddly reassuring. That's us in a nutshell. Rena grinned, then closed her eyes and opened her mind to the facility's power. The energy that flooded through them was beyond anything they'd experienced before. Rena felt her consciousness expand as Zenaval's dimensional awareness merged with her own. Together, they became something new, neither human or collective, but a bridge between states of being. Through their merged awareness, they could see the ancients' plan with perfect clarity. Humanity's physical focus and the collective's dimensional mastery weren't just complementary. They were the two halves of a greater whole. Each interaction between their species pushed them closer to a new stage of evolution. The separatists' cascade reaction fought against their control, trying to tear reality apart. But where technology failed, primal instinct prevailed. Rena's human drive to protect life merged with Zenaval's multidimensional precision, creating patterns of energy that the ancients themselves had encoded in their genes. When it was over, they found themselves surrounded by stunned council members. The facility was safe, its power levels stabilized in ways the collective scientists would spend years trying to understand. Impossible, Vorntal whispered, his form shifting through patterns of disbelief. The energy readings, no beings should have survived channeling that much power. Impossible is what humans do best, Rena said, helped to her feet by Zenaval. Especially when we have the right partners. The ancients knew what they were doing, Zenaval added, her form still harmonizing with Rena's presence. They understood that true advancement comes not from rejecting our primal natures, but from embracing them in new ways. The council chamber hummed with shocked silence as the implications sank in. Everything the collective thought they knew about humanity, about themselves, was changing. There will have to be changes, Vorntal said finally. New protocols for human collective interaction. With respect, first speaker, Rena interrupted, sharing a knowing look with Zenaval. I don't think protocols are what the ancients had in mind. 1 year after their first encounter on Proxima 7, Rena Walsh stood before a gathered assembly of humans and collective members in the ancient facility's grand chamber. The crystalline walls pulsed with energy that now felt familiar, almost welcoming, as both species gathered to witness something unprecedented. The ancients didn't just engineer our species to work together, Rena explained, gesturing to the holographic displays, showing the complex genetic data they decoded. They created us as evolutionary stepping stones toward a greater form of existence. Zenaval moved forward, her dimensional form harmonizing naturally with Rena's physical presence. Each interaction between our species activates dormant genetic sequences. What humans call instinct and what the collective calls dimensional awareness are actually two expressions of the same fundamental potential. The chamber hummed with mixed reactions. Some, like the young collective scholars and human scientists who'd been working together over the past year, showed obvious excitement. Others, particularly the more conservative members of both species, radiated skepticism. You're suggesting that humans, beings who only recently mastered space travel, are somehow equal partners in our evolution? A collective elder asked, their form rippling with disbelief. Not equal, Rena corrected. Complementary. Humans developed differently precisely because we needed to. Our primitive approach to problem solving, our reliance on instinct and direct action, these aren't weaknesses. They're essential traits the ancients engineered into us. Just as they engineered the collective's dimensional mastery and theoretical understanding, Zenaval added. Neither approach is complete without the other. Watch. Together, they approached the central console. Over the past year, they'd learned to merge their consciousness in ways that would have seemed impossible before. As they connected with the ancient technology, their combined presence activated systems that had lain dormant for millennia. The chamber transformed around them. Walls became transparent, revealing the true scope of the facility. A vast network of crystalline structures extending through multiple dimensions. But more incredible was what the assembled crowd could now see happening between Rena and Zenaval. Where their energies merged, a new form of existence took shape. Physical matter and dimensional energy wove together in patterns that echoed the ancients' own evolution. Through their combined consciousness, Rena and Zenaval could perceive realities that neither human nor collective could grasp alone. This is what the ancients intended. Rena's voice echoed through both physical and dimensional space. Not for one species to dominate or guide the other, but for both to evolve together into something greater than either could become alone. The demonstration ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Finally, first speaker Vorntal moved forward, his form showing patterns that Rena had learned to read as thoughtful consideration. When Lieutenant Walsh first treated third speaker Zenaval's injuries using her primitive methods, he said, many of us saw it as proof of human barbarism. Now we understand it was the first step towards something revolutionary. The real revolution, Zenaval responded, is in accepting that advancement doesn't always mean abandoning our basic natures. Sometimes the most primitive solution is exactly what's needed to move forward. Over the next hours, plans were made and protocols established. Though Rena couldn't help but smile at how quickly those protocols would likely be broken. Human instinct and collective precision were already combining in ways the bureaucrats couldn't hope to regulate. Later, in the quiet of the ancient control room, Rena and Zenaval took a moment to appreciate how far they'd come. Did you ever imagine, Rena asked, when you were screaming about my barbaric medical treatment, that we'd end up here? Never, Zenaval's form shimmered with amusement, though I maintain that manually resetting quantum phase disruptions is still barbaric, but effective. Yes, Zenaval agreed, her energy harmonizing with Rena's presence in what had become a gesture of affection. Like so many human traits, barbaric, primitive, and absolutely essential to our shared future. Above them, through the crystalline ceiling, the stars shone in both physical and dimensional space. Somewhere out there, the ancients had ascended to levels of existence their descendants could only imagine. But they'd left behind the keys to following their path, encoded in the unlikely partnership between humanity's primal strength and the collective's dimensional grace. Ready to break some more protocols? Rena asked, eyeing the console that would let them test more of their evolving abilities. With you? Always, Zenaval replied. Someone has to keep your primitive methods from destroying the universe. Admit it, you've grown fond of my primitive methods. Perhaps, Zenaval conceded as they merged their consciousness once again. Though I'll never admit it to the Council. Together, they reached out to touch the ancient technology, ready to discover what other impossible things they could achieve. After all, that's what humans were best at, making the impossible possible. And with the collective as partners, there was no limit to how far they could evolve. The universe, they knew, would never be the same. And that was exactly what the ancients had intended all along. The end.